Chapter 4568. Two mid-god divine embryos. The primordial gods in the forest felt as if they had been struck by lightning. The Maoshan immortal ancestor no longer felt like he had been slapped twice, but more like a dozen times. Boom! At this moment, Lin Ling activated his talent again. This was the Wind Dragon talent. This time, the seventh god-tier divine embryo was revealed. Lin Ling didn't stop there. His right hand turned into the heavenly dragon innate gift and slammed down again. The eighth mid-god innate gift. For mid-god innate gifts, the primordial gods in the forest were shocked again and again. They didn't understand where this newcomer had come from. How could he have 4 mid-god divine embryos? In fact, apart from pure maiden Bai, even treasure god Nanwu Fengyu and the others were shocked. They remembered that Lin Ling didn't have that many mid-god divine embryos before he went to the godland. Just one more. He must fail, he must fail. The Maoshan immortal ancestor was more nervous than ever. If Lin Ling succeeded, he would be greatly humiliated. One person can't have 5 mid-god divine embryos. From what I remember, there wasn't one in the primordial era, the era of gods, or even the chaos realm. There's no way such a freak exists. The Maoshan immortal ancestor shook his head. There was still hope in his heart. The primordial gods in the forest were silent. They felt like they had seen a ghost today. However, they had the same thought as the Maoshan immortal ancestor. One person couldn't have 5 mid-god divine embryos. After all, such a god would be incomparably terrifying in the future. Boom! But at this moment, the final straw that crushed their hearts appeared. Lin Ling, the 5th divine embryo, this was the Luai's true body. This kid. Even treasure god Nanwu Fengyu and the others were shocked. 5 divine embryos. What a monster! Lord Lin Ling is truly amazing, said Xueqi excitedly. Lin Ling wasn't simple at all, just like what the great overlord of the chaos world had said. After the 9 god embryos appeared, a 5-colored light appeared in the sky. The Grand Mist aura was completely revealed. If one looked closely, they would see that the Grand Mist aura covered the entire sky. It was boundless and mysterious. However, under Lin Ling's body, a gap appeared. It was more than 10 meters wide, and it was recovering at a very slow speed. My lord, it worked. Everyone in Lei Gong's hall cheered when they saw the gap in the primordial aura. After so much effort, they could finally enter the Dao realm. Lord Lin Ling is the best. Everyone looked at Lin Ling, and the adoration in their eyes became even more intense. Let's go. Lin Ling smiled faintly and led the group to the Dao realm. He glanced at the Maoshan immortal ancestor as he passed by. Lin Ling had already seen through the Maoshan immortal ancestor's strength. He was one of the strongest lesser gods, but unfortunately he was not a mid-god. Lin Ling was not afraid at all. Although the Dao realm had accumulated a large number of ancient great gods, not everyone had reached the intermediate celestial realm due to the length of time they had cultivated. Of course, stepping into the intermediate celestial realm was only a matter of time for those in the Dao realm. Ignoring the Maoshan immortal ancestor, Lin Ling led the group to the island. The Maoshan immortal ancestor stood silently in the sky, his face dark and his body trembling. The newcomers had ignored him again. Moreover, they had successfully entered the Dao realm right before his eyes. That was a great humiliation. It was the first time the Maoshan immortal ancestor had been so humiliated since he became a primordial god. Under the dense forest, the ancient gods had ugly expressions because no matter where they were, there was always an unwritten rule that the newcomers had to respect the seniors. But now, they had all been disregarded. Are they doing this on purpose? Newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. Although we're not the strongest among the Dao realm, we're still the inheritors of primordial gods. We'll definitely return to godhood in the future. These people are going too far by not giving us face. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from under the ancient tree. She seemed to be chuckling, but there was a hint of discord in her voice, which made the primordial gods' expressions even uglier. However, Lin Ling did not pay attention to them at all and brought everyone down. At the same time, the primordial aura in the sky shot out rays of light and landed between everyone's eyebrows, then disappeared. Dao antecedents. At that moment, everyone's eyes lit up in Lei Gong's great hall. They vaguely felt something extra in their hearts. Then, they opened their palms, and a colorful fragment appeared in their palms. The irregular shape of the fragment was none other than a Tao realm fragment. The Tao realm fragment seemed to be formed from primordial aura. According to the records of Tao antecedents, Tao realm fragments could be exchanged with primordial gods for treasures, and were extremely important. We were almost fooled. Everyone summoned their Tao antecedents and looked at the white jade slip with a sudden realization. Previously, the Maoshan immortal ancestor had told them that Tao realm fragments were useless, and they almost had to hand over their Tao realm fragments. Now, they all knew that Tao realm fragments were actually the key to growth in the Tao realm. Lin Ling also carefully looked at the white jade slip in his hand. Then, he realized that it seemed to be the help of this jade slip in order to leave the Tao realm. At the same time, there were a lot of treasures to exchange in the Tao antecedents. That also meant that as long as he had Tao realm fragments, Lin Ling's strength could also increase. One had to know that in the void of the 9 states, due to the limited resources, it was thousands of times more difficult for Lin Ling to break through to the next realm. It could even be said that it was impossible unless he was lucky. Now that he was in the Tao realm, everything was possible. Are you all deliberately messing with me? At that moment, a cold voice interrupted everyone's investigation. They saw the Maoshan immortal ancestor walking down step by step. The peachwood sword at his waist danced, and wisps of terrifying divine power spread out, forming a peach blossom cloud around his body. Seeing that, everyone looked up with anger in their eyes. The Maoshan immortal ancestor had almost fooled them, and now he had the nerve to be angry? What do you want? Lin Ling put away his Tao antecedents and looked coldly at the Maoshan immortal ancestor. We'll bet 10 Tao realm fragments. You and I will fight, and the winner will take them away. Do you dare? The Maoshan immortal ancestor stopped in his tracks and glared at Lin Ling with resentment. Lin Ling had made him lose all face and even caused him to lose a huge amount of Tao realm fragments. He was unable to swallow this insult. Maoshan immortal ancestor, if you want to fight, I'll fight you. Chapter 4569. The Maoshan immortal ancestor snorted coldly. While he was no match for plain maiden Bai, the primordial gods on the island would side with him. If a fight broke out, plain maiden Bai might not have the upper hand. The Maoshan immortal ancestor is so quick to issue a challenge to a newcomer. That young man may have 5 divine embryos, but that only means that he has extraordinary potential in the future. He's no match for the Maoshan immortal ancestor now. The group of ancient gods slowly walked out of the forest. They didn't seem to be afraid of pure maiden White. After all, she was just a common god. They had seen plenty of Tao realm experts, and had even seen a common god fly past the island not long ago. Moreover, they were reincarnations of primordial gods. They were all middle gods back then, so there was nothing to be surprised about. All right, I agree to fight you. However, I don't have that many Tao realm fragments right now. At this moment, Lin Ling also nodded in agreement. He had long found this swindler an eyesore. However, this was his first time here and he wanted to familiarize himself with the Tao realm. Since this swindler wanted to court death, he would fulfill his wish. Don't worry. As long as you agree to fight me, those fragments will be automatically sent to me when you get them in the future. The Maoshan immortal ancestor licked his lips. He did not expect the young man to be so impulsive as to agree to the challenge. I see. Lin Ling's eyes flashed. He guessed that unless the owner of the Tao realm fragment agreed to the challenge, no one else would be able to snatch it. Moreover, after agreeing to the challenge, the Tao realm cultivator would have the power to control the fragments, and the winner would get to keep them. You may have 5 divine embryos, but you're underestimating us primordial gods. I don't believe that you've cultivated all 5 divine embryos. If you don't, you're just a sword without sword techniques. The Maoshan immortal ancestor slowly drew the peachwood sword at his waist. An ancient aura quietly spread out from the sword. Tao. That was the aura of Taoism. Perhaps to you all, those who have entered the Tao realm are primordial gods, but to me, only middle gods are considered primordial gods. Lin Ling also drew the tyrant song. The blood-red greatsword was filled with murderous intent. What an arrogant kid. Lin Ling's words clearly offended many ancient great gods. Although many of them had not reached the strength of an intermediate celestial, they were all reincarnations of ancient great gods. They were also intermediate celestials in their previous lives. When had they ever been looked down upon like this? I'll show you what a primordial god is. The Maoshan immortal ancestor roared and swung his sword, scattering the peach blossoms. Upon closer inspection, the peach blossoms were formed from paper talismans and possessed the power to ward off evil spirits. Mao Mountain was originally a place of Tao realm magic. As the immortal ancestor of Mao Mountain, the power he was adept at could counter the Tao of void demons and devils. His speed was incomparably fast. In the blink of an eye, he erupted with the speed of 1,000,000 worlds and slashed towards Lin Ling. Clang! The large sword in Lin Ling's hand slashed out. After clashing with the peachwood sword, a deafening sound rang out. God's god power. Lin Ling was shocked. As expected of a primordial god, his sword was so powerful. However, Lin Ling also unleashed his physical strength. After fusing with 30,000 God's god power, he easily blocked the Maoshan immortal ancestor's sword. Lose! The Maoshan immortal ancestor roared. You're not enough. Lin Ling's 7 dantians surged with divine origin. The 2 swords clashed violently. The terrifying power caused the entire island to tremble slightly. Countless giant crocodiles rushed out of the yellow ancient river in the distance, roaring loudly. Of course, for some reason, those ancient giant crocodiles did not land on the island. Clang! 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 The ear-piercing sound continued to be heard. The 2 swords separated as soon as they came into contact, and then clashed again. First part. Lin Ling could sense that the Maoshan immortal ancestor was getting stronger as the battle went on. He was also using part of his strength. He was now certain that the Maoshan immortal ancestor was very powerful. He was even more powerful than the Ox Demon Patriarch. That was because the Ox Demon Patriarch was not strong enough to force him to use the first part of his innate talent fusion. The Maoshan immortal ancestor was powerful because of his god power. As for the steps of the gods, he was not sure if he had them. After the first part of the fusion, Lin Ling's strength increased greatly, and he began to suppress the Maoshan immortal ancestor. He did not use any martial arts. He was just relying on the purest of strength. That was Lin Ling's proudest asset. What did this guy use? Why did his speed, God's god power, and defense all increase? Many primordial gods frowned as they stared at Lin Ling. They couldn't understand. Lin Ling was a god who had come to the Tao realm for the first time, which meant that he hadn't cultivated for a long time. Moreover, he had 5 divine embryos, so how could he have had the time to cultivate? Disregarding everything else, just the cultivation resources alone were difficult to find. God Dukong. At this time, the Maoshan immortal ancestor's strength increased again. A pair of white wings appeared behind him, and with a slight flap of his wings, countless talismans were scattered. The peachwood sword in his hand also became dazzling at this moment. His god power had increased to 200,000 god power. Second part. Suapaku. Lin Ling also activated the second part of the fusion. His speed reached 1.5 million realms, his god power increased to 50,000, and his god power increased to 50,000. Coupled with the divine embryos, he once again suppressed the Maoshan immortal ancestor. Of course, the most terrifying thing for the Maoshan immortal ancestor was that sword. Steps of the slaughter. In his eyes, a roaring sea of blood roared. The entire horizon had turned blood red, and within it, a sword slashed across the sky. Lin Ling's second part of the fusion made the Maoshan immortal ancestor realize that the young man was more terrifying than he imagined. Although he had 5 divine embryos, they did not slow down his cultivation progress at all. He was still domineering in all major areas. But now that the steps of the slaughter had appeared, he knew that he was going to lose. He had 1 type of mid-god divine embryo, while Lin Ling had 5 types. He was naturally weaker than Lin Ling. Even though his divinity force was strong, Lin Ling's 7 dantians and terrifying physical strength made it so that not only did Lin Ling's foundation not fear his divinity force, it even suppressed him. Coupled with Lin Ling's 7 talents, the Maoshan immortal ancestor's secret negative influence did not affect Lin Ling at all. Whoosh! Under everyone's shocked eyes, the sea of blood surging from the horizon drowned the Maoshan immortal ancestor, trying to kill him. The demon-slaying sword was never spared. However, at the critical moment, a 5-colored light gushed out of the Maoshan immortal ancestor's body, enveloping him and shooting into the sky. I'll remember you. The Maoshan immortal ancestor stared at Lin Ling coldly while being enveloped by that power. His expression was full of ferocity. The Maoshan immortal ancestor died once. The primordial gods around them muttered. They naturally knew what happened. The Taoist realm had sensed that the Mao Shan immortal ancestor was about to die, so they protected him and sent him to the Taoist realm. In that case, the Mao Shan immortal ancestor had wasted a chance. Most primordial gods only had 3 chances. Chapter 45-70. The Mao Shan immortal ancestor is truly a disgrace. Next to the ancient tree, 7 beautiful women were full of disdain for the Mao Shan immortal ancestor. For better or worse, the Mao Shan immortal ancestor from the Age of Gods was someone who had been bestowed a divine position. He was also worshipped by the common people and was omnipotent in subduing demons and devils. But now, he was defeated by a newcomer, throwing away their primordial god. Shame. After the mockery, they stared at Lin Ling, curious about this newcomer's background. Generally speaking, those who could enter the Tao realm definitely had a great background. Could this newcomer be a great god from the primordial era? One had to know that in the Tao realm, the primordial gods were divided into the Age of Gods and the primordial era. The primordial era was similar to the primordial era, but in fact, it was before the primordial era, a period after the primordial era. These primordial gods could be considered the first batch of gods after the creation of the world. In fact, even treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu and the others were surprised because they could see that the Mao Shan immortal ancestor was stronger than the bull devil patriarch. They thought that Lin Ling would go all out, but it was clear that Lin Ling won easily. This guy's strength has probably surpassed mine. Treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu sighed. In the past, Lin Ling fainted in the 9 provinces' 7 forbidden grounds. It was treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu's granddaughter, Xiaoyu, who saved Lin Ling. At that time, treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu didn't put Lin Ling in his eyes. However, later on, Lin Ling protected Xiaoyu with his life, which moved treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu. Later on, Lin Ling obtained the divine embryo of his close friend, Luai's, which made treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu consider Lin Ling as one of his own. And now, this junior from back then had become a god and was completely above his head. Treasure god Nan Wu Fengyu was deeply gratified by this. Among everyone, only Lin Ling wasn't surprised by this result. In fact, when he came out of the divine mountain, he was already a tyrant among the lower gods. After the trip to the shattered divine soil, he continuously increased the talents of his 3 divine embryos and his strength reached a heaven-defying level. Apart from mid-gods, he didn't fear any experts. Moreover, he hadn't unleashed his full strength yet because he had a feeling that it wasn't the right time yet. Next, Lin Ling checked the celestial return of Tao tablet and found that there were 11 Tao realm fragments inside. The extra 10 obviously came from the Mao Shan immortal ancestor. It seems like Tao realm has brought the fragment to me. Lin Ling discovered that the Tao realm seemed to be ownerless, but everything here was governed by the laws. Everything here was governed by the laws. If I challenge you, I'll still give you 10 Tao realm shards. Do you dare? At this moment, a voice rang out. Under the ancient tree, one of the 7 beautiful women had spoken. This woman wore a long pink dress and looked very enchanting. In terms of looks and aura, she was one of the best. Compared to Yu and the others, she was on par with White Water Pure Woman. However, the 2 of them belonged to 2 different types of women. After all, they were the reincarnations of ancient gods. That kind of aura was definitely not something ordinary flowers could compare to. What a seductive woman! Yu and the others looked unhappy as they stared at the woman. For some reason, they felt that the woman seemed to be seducing Lin Ling. Hee, do you dare? That was indeed the case. The woman's voice was like a silver bell. Her limpid eyes were looking at Lin Ling, exuding a seductive aura. Sure. However, although Lin Ling was not an ancient god, he was also very experienced and was not tempted at all. His eyes did not even change from the beginning to the end. What a firm martial arts heart. The woman was slightly surprised. If Lin Ling was an ancient god, it would be reasonable for him to not be tempted by her. However, Lin Ling's background did not seem to be famous. I will defeat you. The woman floated out. She looked enchanting, but a pink broadsword appeared in her hand. As she waved it, a pink haze filled the air. It was unexpected that this delicate woman was a goddess who used a broadsword. Moreover, that broadsword was probably a rare treasure. It was definitely a wonton treasure. Pink killing broadsword. Looks like the Peach Mansion's 7 stars do not dare to underestimate that man. The ancient gods were also staring curiously. Crimson Tower. The woman's divine essence was activated. She was also a middle-grade divine fetus and had reached the second grade. Her every movement was like a goddess. Pink haze swallowed and spat out, which could affect the battle state of gods. And with a slash of her broadsword, a pink skeleton appeared. It was the skeleton of a goddess. It flew through the haze. At one moment, it was hell. It made people tremble with fear. At the next moment, it was heaven. Beauties were everywhere. Unfortunately, this did not affect Lin Ling much. Lin Ling's sword was decisive. A sea of blood roared. This guy. Sensing that her divine fetus could not affect the man, the woman's expression turned ugly. The reason for this was that the man's talent was higher than hers. Since her talent could not gain an advantage, then she would have to fight head-on. Rumble. In the pink haze, a single slash cut through the divine world. It had reached the power of divinity of 250,000 worlds. Clang. Unfortunately, although Lin Ling's power of divinity was only 50,000, his other domains were too strong. Coupled with the killing steps, whether it was his aura or attack, he greatly surpassed the woman. The sword and saber continued to clash. Yu, Sakura, and the others widened their horizons. In the end, the beauty decisively admitted defeat. What a pity. If the Peach Constellation's 7 stars had 300,000 power of divinity, perhaps we could defeat him. 300,000 power of divinity is too rare. You have to know that 1 million power of divinity is already a mid-level god. 300,000 power of divinity is almost half of a mid-level god. That's right. There are very few lesser gods with 300,000 power of divinity. All the ancient great gods sighed in their hearts. Another ancient great god had been defeated. This newcomer really couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, they only had a rough guess as to why this newcomer could win. They guessed that this newcomer's talent was too high and had been fully utilized. That was why he was so strong. I'll fight you. At this time, the third ancient god appeared. Sure. If you win, the 20 Dao realm fragments I obtained earlier will all belong to you. Lin Ling nodded. You have courage. That ancient god was an old man. At this moment, he smiled with admiration. 20 Dao realm fragments. This was a huge sum. One had to know that if they did nothing, they would only get 1 Dao realm fragment every 100,000 years. If they had 20, it would take them 2 million years. The two of them did not speak anymore. They activated their divine powers and clashed crazily. Rumble. If such a battle took place in the void of the 9 prefectures, it would definitely cause the void to collapse. However, the void of the Dao realm was too strong. Therefore, it only caused some ripples. The battle between the two of them seemed to be on par. Grandpa Treasure God, do you think second brother can win? Chapter 4571. What an impressive battle. Indra couldn't help but sigh. Beside him, young Demon Lord and the others also had solemn expressions. In fact, they were also rare geniuses in the 9 states void. Unfortunately, ever since they followed Lin Ling, their radiance had been overshadowed by Lin Ling. The main reason was that Lin Ling's growth was too fast. Of course, although following Lin Ling gave them great pressure, it could also broaden their horizons. At least if they cultivated alone, they wouldn't have the chance to enter the Tao realm. The Tao realm was extremely important to them. It was related to whether they could become ancient gods. I admit defeat. After a full 2 hours, the old man took the initiative to admit defeat. This was because 60% of his divine origin had been consumed. He obviously couldn't win with the remaining 40%. Looking at Lin Ling again, he was panting as if he had reached his limit. This also made many ancient gods think that this newcomer had won by a narrow margin. If he was just a little bit stronger, he would definitely be able to defeat this newcomer. Of course, they weren't stupid. They also felt that it was a little strange. Although this newcomer had won by a narrow margin, he had unknowingly won 3 rounds. Could it be that this newcomer is still hiding his strength? If that's the case, then it's too terrifying. However, this possibility isn't high because there aren't enough treasures to increase one's strength outside of the Tao realm. That's right. Moreover, from the looks of it, he doesn't seem to have cultivated for long. Everyone was constantly analyzing, but they couldn't see through Lin Ling. I'll fight you. If you lose, The 30 Tau realm fragments you won earlier will belong to me. How about it? At this moment, another person walked over. This person wasn't tall, but he was very burly like a block of wood. Moreover, he wore earthy brown armor and looked majestic. The Earth War God is fighting, and this guy has the nerve to fight? What's there to be embarrassed about? Although the Earth War God was a peak mid-level god back then, he's now an inheritance body and hasn't recovered his strength at all. Moreover, he's also a low-level god and has the qualifications to fight. Of course I know this, but he's still the war god of the ancient era. The ancient gods were shocked and discussed animatedly. The people in Lei Gong's hall stared at the short and fat armored man. Then, they heard the conversation between the ancient gods in the distance. They instantly knew that the short and fat armored man was not simple. Sure. Lin Ling looked at the man indifferently. I am a subordinate of the Heavenly Emperor of Supreme Polarity, one of the 5 gods of war, the Earth God of War. The armor seemed to admire Lin Ling's courage, so it revealed its origin. 5 war gods. Lin Ling was shocked. He had once read a mythical novel. The 5 war gods were incomparably powerful existences in the later stages of ancient times. Be careful. The Earth War God roared and his body trembled. His feet slammed into the ground and he merged into it. A divine embryo of the 3rd rank. Lin Ling also sensed the terrifying aura coming at him, but at this moment, the ground suddenly shook, and then a wave of earth rushed out from under his feet, drowning Lin Ling. Looking at the front of the wave of earth, there were even more waves of earth coming at him. These waves of earth were mixed with an incomparably terrifying divine power. Clang! Lin Ling slashed out with all his strength, but when it landed on the wave of earth in front of him, a powerful rebound force came. Even someone as strong as Lin Ling felt pain in his hand. After his attack failed, Lin Ling immediately retreated. Rumble! As soon as he moved, the wave of earth drowned the place where he had been standing. What a powerful divine power! It's probably in the 300,000 range. Most importantly, there seems to be another power in the divine power. It's a divine staircase, and it should be of the earth element. Lin Ling, who was retreating, was shocked. The Earth War God was indeed powerful. The Earth War God's divine staircase is the stair of thick earth. He has just awakened not long ago, but he has already reached the sovereign rank. As long as he steps on the ground, the great Tao cannot be destroyed. If this goes on, the newcomer will definitely lose. He's definitely going to lose. However, he's just a newcomer, but they sent out the Earth War God. I have to say, this newcomer will lose honorably. In the distance, the ancient gods had already retreated far away. At the same time, they were constantly discussing. As for Lei Gong's hall, it was the same. In their eyes, the earthen wave was incomparably terrifying. This type of earth was no longer ordinary earth. It was the divine earth of the ancient era. Pang pang pang. A figure weaved through the wave. It was Lin Ling. He would occasionally slash at the wave of earth, but the wave of earth's rebound force was even stronger than before. What a powerful divine staircase. It's getting fiercer and fiercer. Lin Ling was shocked. He decisively used the 3rd part of his innate talent fusion. His strength instantly rose. He gripped the blood sword and weaved through the earthen wave. The Earth War God's divine staircase was at the sovereign rank, and Lin Ling's divine staircase was also at the sovereign rank. So, after the 3rd part of his innate talent fusion, the previously indestructible earthen wave was pierced through. The 3rd part of his innate talent fusion was too powerful. His physical strength was 10 million worlds worth of power. His divine power was 80,000 rays. His speed had reached 1.5 million worlds worth of speed. Among them, his physical strength was the most terrifying. Defeated. Defeated. The Earth War God chose a good time to attack. In the blink of an eye, he obtained 30 Tao realm fragments. At this moment, no one noticed Lin Ling in the earthen wave. Instead, they stared at the roiling earthen sea and spoke with envy. Shill. But at this moment, the roiling earthen wave suddenly stopped. It froze in midair. Then with a bang, it scattered down like sand. The sky was filled with earthen dust. It was a shocking sight. In the roiling dust, one could vaguely see a figure standing there. It was the Earth War God. And at his neck, a large sword flashing with bloodlight hung there. Beside him stood a young man in a grey robe. You lost. A soft voice floated out at the same time. The Earth War God didn't move. His eyes continued to flicker, as if he never thought he would lose. Once my divine stare took form, it would be like a heaven-sealing city. Even if a god attacked, it would be able to resist for a moment or two. But you defeated me before my divine stare took form. Then the Earth War God seemed to think of something. He was shocked by Lin Ling's eyes and finally nodded helplessly. I admit defeat. 10 Dao realm fragments appeared in Lin Ling's Dao regression heavenly seat. How did he lose again? The Earth War God clearly had the upper hand. I don't know either. I saw the Earth War God's earthen wave constantly suppressing that rookie. When did that rookie come to the Earth War God's side? It looks like he has indeed hidden his strength. All the ancient gods stared at Lin Ling and discovered that Lin Ling's aura had changed. It carried a hint of nirvanic aura. The gray robe had also changed color, making it hard for anyone to forget it with a single glance. In the blink of an eye, he obtained 40 Dao realm fragments. Chapter 4572. Who else wants to fight me? Originally, Lin Ling didn't want to pay attention to these ancient gods. However, he didn't want to miss out on the chance to obtain the Tao realm fragment by defeating them. Upon hearing this, all the ancient great gods fell silent. At first, they saw that Lin Ling was new and his strength was limited. However, Lin Ling had defeated 4 ancient gods in a row. Among them, the Earth War God was the most valuable. This made them realize that this newcomer's strength had actually surpassed many ancient gods. I've said it before. In my eyes, only mid-level gods can be considered great gods of ancient times. You are at most gods. Lin Ling saw that no one spoke. He spoke calmly, his voice full of sarcasm and disdain. The expressions of the ancient great gods turned ugly. A mere junior with a bit of strength, wasn't he being too arrogant? We've only cultivated for a short time. If we were at our peak, would you dare to say this in front of us? How arrogant! Many ancient gods said in low voices. Although they were not as strong as Lin Ling now, they were all indomitable ancient gods in their previous lives. How could they take this lying down? I've cultivated for a shorter time than you, right? However, Lin Ling retorted, leaving the ancient gods speechless. This newcomer had just reached the Tao realm. Naturally, his cultivation time was much shorter than theirs. If you dare, then you dare. If you don't dare, then you don't dare. Lin Ling said again. All right, I'll fight you. An ancient god couldn't take it anymore. He turned into wind and floated out. His entire body was wrapped in the fierce wind. This was Atlas Wind God. In the Age of Gods, he was an ancient god who controlled the wind and rain. He had once been conferred the title of a god. His strength was naturally his speed. However, in terms of wind, Lin Ling's talent, Wind Dragon, was also able to control wind and rain. Back then, this dragon ancestor had followed the Dragon King to control wind and rain. Atlas Wind God's strength was his speed. The fact that he could unleash the speed of 1,500,000 worlds made him one of the best among the lesser gods. Originally, he thought that even if he couldn't win, he would at least be able to maintain an undefeatable state. However, Lin Ling had already fused with the third stage of his innate talent, and the power of 1.5 million worlds erupted as well. Defeat. The fifth person lost in the blink of an eye. Following that, Lin Ling invited the ancient gods to battle again. The 6th battle, the 7th battle, all the way until the 10th battle. Everyone was shocked, including the Thunder God Great Hall. It was normal for Lin Ling to win 1 or 2 battles, but Lin Ling had won 10 battles in a row. Most importantly, his opponents were all ancient great gods who had cultivated for at least 10,000 years. Some of them had even cultivated for 100,000 years. I'm getting more and more curious about who this newcomer is. What era is he from? Moreover, he fought 10 ancient gods in a row. Won't his divine essence be exhausted? Everyone felt that it was inconceivable. He was simply a freak, a monster among low-level deities. He couldn't be measured according to common sense. Who else wants to battle me? At this time, Lin Ling also looked down on the ancient gods. His words also made them calm down. Although they didn't dare to battle Lin Ling, as ancient gods, they still weren't convinced by Lin Ling. Therefore, they all sneered and mocked Lin Ling for being a frog at the bottom of the well. He didn't know that outside the island, there were countless experts, and low-level deities could only hide in a corner and not dare to come out. This guy obtained 100 Tao state fragments in the blink of an eye. Someone said enviously. In the Tao realm, no one had obtained so many Tao state fragments as soon as they entered. His words also carried a hint of sowing discord. Kid, with your attitude, you won't go far in the Tao realm. I advise you to hand over 90 Tao state fragments to appease everyone's anger. At the same time, a dignified voice sounded. Someone seemed to be jealous of Lin Ling's great harvest, so he wanted to force Lin Ling to hand over the treasures. Lin Ling instantly smiled and looked at the person who spoke. His eyes were full of disdain. Previously, when he was fighting, no one came to stop him. Now, seeing that he had a great harvest, they immediately ran out to speak with a strong sense of righteousness. Did they think that Lin Ling was a fool? Are you going to hand it over or not? Seeing Lin Ling's sneer, the ancient god spoke again with a dignified voice. This also made many ancient gods look over. Then they were all delighted. Taishan Water Spirit Hei Ling God. This was a mid-level deity, and also one of the few mid-level deities on this island. The difference between a mid-level deity and a low-level deity was like heaven and earth. No matter how strong a low-level deity was, at most, he could only barely block the attack of a mid-level deity. As for winning, that was something that would never happen. Now that a mid-level deity had appeared, wouldn't the newcomer obediently hand over the Tao state fragments? Are you the only one who wants my Tao state fragments? One person is too little. Lin Ling sneered and wasn't afraid at all. Count me in. Another voice rang out. Two men in cotton robes walked out with surging auras. Looking at the power of divinity they displayed, it was easily over 1,000,000 units. Taishan Fire Spirit Hei Ling God. As they gazed at the other man, they were shocked once more. Because this was another mid-level god. Just the two of you? Lin Ling looked at them from the corner of his eyes and still felt that it was too little. The two of us are enough. Although we can't get the Tao state fragments by killing you, you have to know that any god only has 3 chances to die here. Wasting one is one less chance. Do you really want to save those Tao state fragments to exchange for a life? Taishan Water Spirit Hei Ling God said coldly. His skin was dark, and he looked like a farmer. However, his eyebrows were very long, and he was imposing without being angry. This ancient god had been in the Tao state for a long time, so now he had recovered 70% of his strength. Do you also want to waste a life to rob me? Staring at the two, Lin Ling also spoke with a light smile. You're courting death. The two mid-level deities didn't expect that Lin Ling would dare to threaten them. I gave you face, but you don't want it. If you want to die, then I'll comply with you. Taishan Fire Spirit Hei Ling God shouted angrily. He had a head of red hair, and his legs were bare. He looked like an ancient god. It's not certain who will die. White Water Maiden, Saint Xueqi, kill them. After Lin Ling got the affirmation, he didn't waste any more time and said to Lei Gong in the distance. White Water Maiden. You want to fight 2 mid-level deities by yourself? You're courting death. And that kidney, what the hell is Xueqi? I've never heard of it. Many ancient gods were watching a good show. As for the other mid-level deities on the island, they sneered. Previously, they also wanted to attack, but the 2 mid-level deities took the initiative. Now, a group of newcomers dared to fight against mid-level deities of the Tao state. They were asking for a slap in the face. Dong. However, just as this thought came to their minds, suddenly, a deafening sound rang out, causing the gods to feel dizzy. In a daze, they saw a huge ancient bell fall, smashing Taishan Water Spirit Hei Ling God to the ground. Even his shoes were sent flying. Chapter 4573. The other barefooted celestial fire spirit, Honorable God Qi Ling, was dumbfounded. Then, his feet began to tremble. A mid-level deity was killed in one move. This was too strong. He's dead. He was taken away. In the dense forest, all the ancient gods opened their mouths wide. Their eyes were fixed on the ground. There was a huge ancient bell emitting an overbearing aura. Although the light on the ancient bell was gentle, it was very ancient. It was like the first ray of light at the beginning of the world. What kind of treasure is that? It looks like the Eastern Emperor bell. God, could this person be the successor of the Eastern Emperor Tai? I'm so jealous. The Eastern Emperor Bell is one of the 10 great chaotic divine artifacts. It is said that those who are not of the Eastern Emperor bloodline cannot control it. One astonished cry after another could be heard. Those gods hiding in the distance all narrowed their eyes. To be able to kill a god with a single blow. If one didn't have absolute confidence, then it was best not to offend that primordial god. Hand over 100 Tao realm fragments and I will not send you off. Think about it, although the fragments are precious, your life is more important. In the Tao realm, there are only 3 lives. At this time, Lin Ling's calm voice was heard. However, when it fell into the ears of the celestial fire spirit, Honorable God Qi Ling, it was very loud. It was a direct threat. I'll give it to you. However, the Eastern Emperor Bell was not something he could provoke. He estimated that unless he reached the late stage of the mid-level deity stage, he would not be able to resist it. Lin Ling immediately took the 100 Tao realm fragments. In a short period of time, he had obtained 200 Tao realm fragments. Moreover, this was his first time here. Although he could not dominate this place, at least no one dared to provoke him. And the fact was indeed so. In terms of low-level deities, Lin Ling's strength was obvious to all. In terms of mid-level deities, the Eastern Emperor Bell was showing off. In a place like this island, unless one had absolute confidence, they would not dare to provoke Lin Ling and his group. Haha, interesting. This mythical island finally has a good ancient god. Good, after I pass the Tao barrier, I will meet you. Suddenly, a loud shout came from afar. The sound was rolling and it formed a heaven and earth roulette, soaring into the sky. The power of this divine fetus had probably reached the 3rd grade. However, judging from his aura, he had the strength of a low-level deity. No wonder he dared to challenge Lin Ling. Very clearly, this person was eyeing Lin Ling's Tao realm fragment. Of course, after experiencing the previous great battle, the ordinary great gods of ancient times didn't dare to rashly come out to battle. However, this person was still confident, which meant that he should have some ability. 6 Celestial Lords of the Southern Dipper, Celestial Lord Du Xing, that old fox. Many people stared into the distance, their eyes solemn. Speaking of which, Star Lord Du Xing wasn't a great god from the primordial era, but had come from the primordial era. However, he was cunning and specialized in deceiving Tao realm fragments. Thus, his speed of growth was very fast and his foundation was very deep. According to legend, he had even fought a medium god and was in an undefeated state. To be able to remain undefeated as a lesser god was extremely rare. If this person were to become a mid-level deity, his power would probably increase by 200 times. Moreover, it was precisely because of how cunning this person was that ordinary lesser gods didn't dare fight him because they were afraid that he would cheat them of their Tao realm fragments if they lost. Who is this? Lin Ling looked into the distance and asked calmly. Star Lord Du Xing is one of the 6 Star Lords of the Southern Dipper. During the Age of the Gods, he was conferred the title of a god by the Celestial Emperor. Now that he has his eyes on you, you'd better watch out. A crisp voice rang out. Among the 7 fairies, one of the oldest beauties smiled and said, Where is he now? Lin Ling asked again. The Tao barrier is the only way to leave the island. Usually, ancient great gods who have just reached the Tao realm will be trapped in a place. If they want to leave, they have to walk out of the Tao barrier. People like us are among those who have been trapped on the island. Some of us have been trapped on the island for 30 million years. The woman smiled. How is that possible? Hearing that, the young demon lord immediately frowned. How could they endure being trapped on the island for 30 million years? You're ignorant. The woman looked at the young demon lord disdainfully. Firstly, this island is very big. It's definitely not boring to cultivate here. Secondly, it's not like we can't leave. It's just that we have to return to the void of the universe where we are. Thirdly, and this is also the most important thing, do you think we want to be trapped here? I'll tell you. You know, outside the island, the gods are even stronger. The Tao realm is for our safety. That's why there's a Tao barrier. Of course, if you don't want to leave through the Tao barrier, there's a river in the distance. You can leave by leaping over the river. What's so great about that river? The young demon lord was annoyed that he was being looked down upon by a beauty. Unfortunately, He had not passed by the Yellow River before and did not know how terrifying it was. Lin Ling, Bai Xueqi, and Su Nu had left before. Therefore, Lin Ling explained, there are countless ancient giant crocodiles hidden in the river. They are very strong. Even an intermediate celestial would find it difficult to leap over them. That's so scary. The young demon lord's expression changed instantly. Then, he looked at the beauty with shame. What's a Dao barrier? Lin Ling also looked at the beauty and asked. Hee, a Dao barrier is a layer of fog. There are 9 layers in total. Only by breaking through them can one have a chance to leave. Currently, there are only about 30,000 primordial gods who have left the island. The rest are still trying to break through the Dao barrier. The beauty said with a smile. Lin Ling nodded. It seemed that if they wanted to meet the gods of this era, they had to break through the Dao barrier. Moreover, there were many intermediate celestials here. This meant that if they wanted to leave the Dao barrier, it did not depend on their cultivation level. All right, let's find a place to rest. Lin Ling did not plan to stay any longer. He led the people from Lei Gong's palace and left. Looking at Lin Ling and his group, the primordial gods narrowed their eyes. Not only were they unhappy, but they also felt great pressure. If there was someone among this group of newcomers who left the island faster than them, they would be greatly embarrassed. Lin Ling did not care about what they were thinking. He continued to move forward. Then, he realized that the island was indeed very big. It was comparable to a prefecture in the 9 states. Moreover, there were birds chirping and flowers blooming here. Whether it was the flowers, grass or rocks, the spiritual energy was rich. It was as if it had existed since the beginning of time. What an ancient spiritual energy! Yu and the others all liked this place. This was because even if they did not cultivate on the island, their cultivation level would still improve slowly. Let's go there. Then, Lin Ling pointed at a forest in front of them. As there were not many mountains on the island, it was a flat land. Therefore they chose a random location. Everyone started to set up camp. They took out their usual living things. Some people were even responsible for building the cave houses. Everything was in good order. This piece of land also belonged to Lei Gong's palace. Chapter 4574. My lord, that won't do. Lin Ling, there's no need. You can keep the fragments. Everyone waved their hands. Nanwu Fengyun smiled. Lin Ling, we came to the Dao realm to cultivate. Everyone has to find the fragments themselves, not rely on you for everything. Otherwise, how can we cultivate? Besides, even if you help us this time, can you help us forever? In the long run, this will be of great help. It won't be good for us. Yes, everyone has their own path. Although we are all from the Great Hall of Lei Gong, we have to walk our own paths. Young Qilin said. Dao realm fragments were the key for gods to become stronger. The process of obtaining them was also a form of cultivation. If one had to rely on others for everything, then even if one's cultivation level was high enough, one's state of mind and understanding of the Great Dao would not meet the requirements. How about this? I'll keep 100 fragments and give the rest to everyone. In fact, Lin Ling knew this as well. However, since everyone had just arrived, he wanted to help them. Xueqi, you take it. You contributed the most this time. Everyone looked at Xueqi. Xueqi scratched the back of his head awkwardly. He was a little embarrassed to accept it. Although he had contributed a lot, the one who led the Great Hall of Lei Gong and brought the Great Hall of Lei Gong to glory was Lord Lin Ling. Xueqi's wish was to see the Great Hall of Lei Gong grow stronger and resolve the regrets of the past Lei Gong. Take it, Lin Ling said. He was a little speechless. Xueqi was not afraid of the gods of Ling Nation. Why was he so embarrassed? All right, I'll take it. Xueqi finally nodded. However, he planned to use it to exchange for treasures to improve the Great Hall of Lei Gong's strength. Everyone, look around and see if you can find a way to collect the fragments. After that, cultivate yourselves and become stronger so that we can get out of here as soon as possible. Lin Ling said to the crowd. However, many people were deep in thought. In the end, they raised their heads and looked at Lin Ling. It was all thanks to you that we were able to enter the Dao realm. However, we feel that with our current strength, we still can't cultivate here. Therefore, we plan to return to the void of the 9 states first and wait until our strength reaches the God realm. Enter here again. That works too. Lin Ling nodded. Just as he was about to say something, Saint Guy said, "Later, I'll take a look at the Tao Requital Demi-Immortal and find some cultivation treasures for you. You can take them back to the 9 prefectures. That way, you'll be able to cultivate faster. You can come back when you're late lesser gods." Alright. Many people had the same idea. Only those gods who had reached late-stage low god level would stay here. Of course, powerful gods like the giant ghost, even if they had yet to reach late-stage low god realm, would still be able to stay because of their formidable strength. Lin Ling, I saw many ancient great gods by the river. It seems that the Yellow River can increase one's strength. Let's go there and try cultivating when we have time. And Yue returned with the Xian Yuan Go. Sure, but be careful. There are ancient giant crocodiles in the river. If you're not careful, they can easily kill you. Lin Ling nodded. Lin Ling, when I was looking at the Tao Requital Demi-Immortal, I found a mission in there that seems to be fishing for Tao fish. The Tao fish is nearby. I heard that the process of fishing can increase one's understanding of the great Tao. You can also exchange the Tao fish for Tao fragments. At this moment Yu also spoke. There are such things in the Tao Requital Demi-Immortal? Lin Ling was a little curious. That's right. Other than that, there are other missions. For example, cutting down a type of divine tree. When you reach a certain number, you can exchange it for Tao fragments. Whitewater Pure Maiden explained. She was also looking at the Tao Requital Demi-Immortal. There's also planting divine herbs. That seems to work too. But there are many missions in the Tao Requital Demi-Immortal. The others began to speak one after another. It seems that the Tao realm arranged all these to train the ancient god's state of mind. Lin Ling had also guessed a few things. This was because the gods who could enter this place all had powerful backgrounds. Moreover, after they recovered their memories, it was inevitable that they would be impatient. They could not wait to regain their past strength as soon as possible. Thus, the Tao realm had made such an arrangement so that they could put down their impatient hearts and be more patient. Recover their strength. In this way, when they recovered their former strength, their strength would most likely be even more powerful. The Tao realm, is everything to fight against the will of the world? Lin Ling looked at the sky and mumbled to himself. Then, he started to worry about the Kurishin and the others. He didn't know where they would appear in the Tao realm. Then everyone, go do your own things. Lin Ling said to the others. Then they left in 2s and 3s. Some returned to the void of the 9 states, and some continued to cultivate here. Everyone walked a different path, so they didn't gather together. Instead, they scattered around the island to try their own opportunities. They would only come back here when they were cultivating. Lin Ling wasn't worried about their safety. After the previous incident, the ancient gods on the island knew that Lei Gong's hall wasn't to be trifled with. Therefore, the people in Lei Gong's hall scattered. Although there might be some small troubles, it wasn't to the point of life and death. These small troubles were the setbacks and difficulties that every god had to face. Lin Ling was their leader, but he couldn't help them in every way. Moreover, Lin Ling also had his own path to walk. Tao Return to Heaven. Lin Ling started to check the Tao Return to Heaven. His consciousness immediately entered a white space. This space was like the primordial clouds at the beginning of the world. In the ancient clouds, endless vitality filled the air. It was like the first breath of life in the world. However, on the other side, in the gray clouds, rolling death aura was also rolling. Life and death seemed to represent the most ancient great Tao of the universe. What a magnificent power! Lin Ling stood on the primordial clouds and looked into the distance. He felt a sense of disdain. Rumble! Suddenly, there was a treasure light in front of him. It was mixed with lightning and illuminated the sky. The treasure light was very ancient. It was like the light of a saint. Then more and more treasure light appeared. There were a total of 18 lights. Looking over, on the primordial clouds, the 18 lights illuminated the world. It made people feel like they were worshipping it. Lin Ling quietly observed for a long time. After knowing that there was no danger, he slowly walked over. He didn't know if other people would have such a scene when checking the Tao Return to Heaven, but his Tao Return to Heaven was different. It shocked him. As he walked forward, a huge rock appeared in front of him. The rock was like a mountain, floating in the clouds. The 18 lights wrapped around it, and lines of ancient words were faintly discernible. Heaven-mending stone, replenishing yin and yang, stabilizing the universe. Chapter 4575. As he got closer, Lin Ling realized that the Heaven-mend stone was the true Tao return to Heaven's seat. Any treasure could be exchanged here, and the treasures inside seemed to have been collected for several eras. Not only were there magical treasures and techniques, but there were also divine fetuses, treasures, and so on. There were too many of them. If he wanted to see them all at once, he would need great strength. Fortunately, Lin Ling could be considered an ancient god, so after spending some time, he could finish looking. It turned out that this stone not only had all kinds of treasures, but also missions from the Tao realm. Lin Ling even saw the Tao realm. The final reward was actually the Tao realm. Could it be that he had obtained the entire Tao realm? However, when Lin Ling wanted to look carefully, the words after the Tao realm appeared in a haze, blocking everything. Looks like I don't have enough foundation to check. Lin Ling guessed secretly. Then, Lin Ling saw the Tao Pagoda. In the square prison, the Rainbow Cloud Ancestor had said that the Tao Pagoda was one of the most mysterious places in the Tao realm. However, only after becoming a mid-level god would he be qualified to explore it. The Tao realm is omnipotent. If I can get it, I will be a true god of creation. I can get wind and rain if I want it. Lin Ling licked his lips, looking forward to the Tao realm. Of course, he believed that any ancient god in the Tao realm would want to use the Tao realm for themselves. First, I need to find a suitable treasure for my cultivation. Lin Ling kept looking. Now, he had 5 mid-level god fetuses and did not plan to improve his talent for the time being. As for his cultivation, he felt that he needed some foundation to break through. After all, he had 7 dantians, and it was more difficult for him to break through than other gods. As for treasures, techniques, and so on, Lin Ling had the tyrannical song sword and the ancient Kwafu sun-chasing boots. He did not plan to exchange for any treasures for the time being. As for techniques, Lin Ling had the Stare of Wisdom and Panga's attack. He also had the Chaos Divine formula. These techniques had not been cultivated to the extreme, so there was no need to exchange for techniques. Moreover, a mere 100 fragments of the Tao realm could not be exchanged for any good techniques. Therefore, his goal was to increase his foundation. He recalled the Southern Dipper's 6-star monarch, Calamity Traversing Star Monarch. This person's reputation wasn't good, so he was probably very strong. Therefore, it was better to make more preparations so that he wouldn't be killed once or owe a large number of Tao realm fragments. On the other hand, one's foundation was divided into many aspects. There was the comprehension of the Grand Tao, the tempering of one's mental state, the improvement of one's fleshly body, the improvement of one's soul, the improvement of one's natural talent, and the improvement of one's godly energy and godly steps. However, with Lin Ling's current Tao realm fragment, he probably wouldn't be able to afford it even if he had many foundations. My soul force and physical strength aren't weak at all. The reason why I was able to win 10 battles in a row was because of the endurance of my physical strength. However, my godly power has always been my weak point. My base level is only 30,000. When the other ancient great gods used their full strength, their godly power could reach 200,000. Lin Ling finally came to a decision. He chose to increase his power of divinity. I choose you. Lin Ling investigated for a long time and finally came to a decision. What he chose was something called the Enlightenment Seahorse, and it required 100 Tao realm shards to exchange for it. This seahorse was born at the beginning of the universe and had witnessed the birth, prosperity, and changes of the universe. It could use the light of life to enhance the great Tao comprehension of ancient great gods. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As soon as he exchanged for the treasure, Lin Ling realized that the scenery around him had changed. He was surrounded by mountains, and he was floating at the bottom of the mountains. If he could reach the top, he would be able to see all the mountains below. Looking up, the sky was filled with light. A huge brown seahorse was floating there. Its body was a glassy color, and it was so clear that one could see the changes within. However, the seahorse's interior was like the beginning of chaos, with dense mist lingering. The seahorse's inhuman eyes looked down at Lin Ling. Those eyes seemed to be able to speak. It seemed to be saying that 10 Dao realm shards could only allow one to comprehend Dao for 10 days. How much one comprehended would depend on one's fate. What an ancient thing. Lin Ling was shocked. From the seahorse's body, he could sense the most ancient vitality and death. It formed a life and death wheel aura that emanated constantly. The origins of this spiritual seahorse could be traced back to the beginning of the world. Moreover, it was only for 10 days. This meant that many gods were using the Enlightenment seahorse. As long as one had a Dao realm shard, they would summon it. Let's begin. Lin Ling nodded. The light of enlightenment is very difficult to summon. If you overestimate yourself and force yourself to continue, it is very likely that you will waste one of your lives. Therefore, gods who have already wasted 2 lives are not allowed to summon the Enlightenment seahorse. The seahorse stared coldly at Lin Ling, and a voice sounded in Lin Ling's mind. Next, the seahorse gently spat out an endless amount of light like rain. At that moment, the mountains were also illuminated with a peerless divine light. It was very breathtaking. The little bits of light covered Lin Ling, making Lin Ling's body feel warm. It was as if he was bathing in the sun. Lin Ling could not help but moan. This was the first time in his life that he had felt such comfortable sunlight. At that moment, Lin Ling felt that the realm-swallowing beast had given birth to a power. It was the power of a god. The realm-swallowing beast had always been increasing Lin Ling's physical strength so that Lin Ling would have a strong defense. This was the first time it had given birth to the power of a god. Of course, this did not mean that the realm-swallowing beast did not have the power of a god. It was just that Lin Ling rarely cultivated this talent. The power of a god was slowly increasing. At some point, Lin Ling did not even need to comprehend it. However, Lin Ling knew that this was because his talent and foundation were too good. That was why the power of a god was increasing crazily. Unknowingly, it has reached 10,000. Lin Ling was shocked. Then he became excited. However, towards the end, the increase started to slow down. It was as if after the potential was stimulated, it slowly returned to normal. At the same time, Lin Ling felt that the light around him started to heat up. It was no longer as warm as the sun. I see. Lin Ling instantly knew that the seahorse could not hold on any longer. It meant that the light was constantly getting hotter. What made Lin Ling feel strange was that this heat was not the heat of fire. It was more like the heat of life. The realm-swallowing beast's talent had increased by 15,000 power of a god. Finally, it returned to normal. However, the talent of the evil spirit's tribulation body had also been stimulated. Its potential had skyrocketed. This caused the power of a god to increase like flowing water. Of course, during this process, Lin Ling felt that his skin had started to blister. The heat of life given by the light was too strong. No matter how strong his physical defense was, it was difficult to resist. Hold on. Lin Ling gritted his teeth and bathed in the light. Time passed quietly. The evil spirit's tribulation body had increased by 20,000 power of a god. There's more. Chapter 4576. He had never thought that when his life force reached the limit, it would be so terrifying. At this moment, he wished he could feel the aura of death. Of course, he also knew that only with the nourishment of life force could the potential of the divine embryos be stimulated and surpass their limits. The third to be stimulated was the Vajra Bodhi. The limit of this talent was very strong. The power of divinity increased explosively at the beginning. It reached 30,000 strands of power of divinity. Lin Ling was also trembling with excitement. This Dao realm was worthy of its name. 100 strands of Dao realm fragments had caused his strength to soar. However, the process of Dao enlightenment was also very painful. Gradually, the skin on Lin Ling's body began to crack. Blood and flesh began to appear and drip down like candles. And he had not experienced the feeling of his body being injured in a long time. After a long time, the Vajra Bodhi reached its limit and the progress slowed. All the life force began to flow into another divine embryo. This was the Wind Dragon's talent. Ka. The Wind Dragon's divine power skyrocketed, but Lin Ling's flesh and blood were all burned to ashes. They fell to the bottom of the mountains and sprouted because their life force was too vigorous. Then, they all turned into children and started to grow crazily. This was because of the avatar of the true body, the nascent soul Great Tao body. Looking at the sky, there was only a white skeleton floating there. In the white skeleton's dantian, a blinding light bloomed like the sun, and a terrifying power was constantly spitting out. This white skeleton was naturally Lin Ling. Using the white skeleton to block the light of Tao enlightenment in the sky, Lin Ling's pressure was undoubtedly reduced by a lot. Luckily, I have the heavenly dragon bones. White Bone's skeleton spat out human words, and its teeth also made a rattling sound. Deep within the white skeleton, a dim Buddhist light flickered. At a closer look, the white skeleton looked like a human, but in fact, it was more like a dragon skeleton. There are 3 more talents. Next, Lin Ling sensed that the wind dragon's power of divinity was weakening. Clearly it had reached its limit. But there were still 3 more. Just thinking about it was terrifying. The next was the Thunder Lock True Body. The wild power of divinity transformed into thunder that spread throughout the white bone. Unfortunately, it couldn't block the illumination of the light of enlightenment in the sky. The surging life force poured into Lin Ling's bones, causing cracks to appear on his bones. Ka. Some bone fragments fell off and smashed into the mountains. The bone fragments that were as big as leaves actually smashed a divine mountain into pieces. From this, it could be seen how much life force was suppressed by the bone. Hurry up, hurry up! Lin Ling kept shouting. He didn't know how long he could hold on like this. However, the more he looked forward to time, the slower it seemed. A day felt like a year. This was Lin Ling's current experience. Quietly, Luai's true body retreated, and the flame of the human monarch appeared. Ka. However, more and more of Lin Ling's bones peeled off. His arms, thighs, and in the end, only his upper body was left. Ka. Not long after, his head also fell off. Upon closer inspection, only his chest was left. However, there seemed to be a small sun within his chest, and the light was even more dazzling. That was where his 7 dantians were located. As for Lin Ling, he entered a semi-conscious state. However, at the crucial moment, a bone-chilling cold aura spread out, causing the fiery life force to dim a little. Of course, it didn't last long, and it only had a slight effect. It was the primal chaos divine formula. This first cultivation technique sensed life force and was actually refining it. Ka. When the bones in his chest began to peel off, only a blazing sun was left in the sky. However, upon closer inspection, that blazing sun was still connected to bits of broken bones. Fortunately, he had finally reached the heavenly dragon's bones. This was also Lin Ling's current strongest divine embryo talent, reaching the 3rd grade. This talent could also stimulate his potential for a longer period of time. In the end, Lin Ling's consciousness was already blurred. Only his soul force was shouting, "Hold on, hold on." A powerful consciousness was supporting him. This consciousness was accumulated from the trials and tribulations that Lin Ling had experienced since he started learning martial arts. Today, this consciousness had reached a point where it could make one's hair stand on end. It was also because of this consciousness that it was supporting his soul force. This was because Lin Ling's enormous soul force had been injected with endless life force, and it began to feel a burning sensation. This burning sensation caused Lin Ling to feel as if he had entered a brand new world. It was as if he had his own great Tao, a martial Tao that he had created himself. In the haze, he saw an empty area. Several voices were talking about the great Tao, talking about the creation of heaven and earth. These voices seemed to belong to the most ancient god of creation. And among them, there was even the will of the world. Furthermore, when these voices noticed Lin Ling, they all said to Lin Ling, "Fellow Taoist, you're back." However, Lin Ling didn't know if these fantasies were just illusions or if he was dreaming of Hong Meng, but they left him confused. At a certain moment, when Lin Ling felt his mind go blank, he had already fallen into a deep sleep. In the sky, the light in the seahorse's mouth continued to weaken. The light of life also gradually disappeared. However, the seahorse calmly looked down at the large ball of light that was like the sun. With the strength of a lesser god, you actually lasted for 10 days. You're the first person in the Tao realm. The seahorse spoke in human language. This was because the light of enlightenment was used by many intermediate gods and even superior gods. However, for a lesser god, the only one who could last for 10 days was Lin Ling. Of course, this wasn't because the other ancient gods didn't want to try to last for 10 days. It was because they couldn't reach the limit of 10 days. This was because their divine embryos didn't have as much talent as Lin Ling. Tao realm. I'll reward you with 10 Tao realm fragments and record them in the Tao pagoda. The seahorse gradually disappeared, and the entire void began to shake. Mountains collapsed, and thousands of trees were uprooted. The bone fragments and flesh on the ground seemed to flow in reverse as they shot towards the sun in the sky. Countless bones turned into a ball of bones. Sometimes they turned into dragon bones, sometimes they turned into human bones. When the flesh and blood returned, a human figure finally quietly condensed. At the same time, in the Tao realm, the ancient gods looked at the Tao pagoda and discovered that there was an additional line of mysterious words. It seemed to say that a lesser god had comprehended the Tao for 10 days. A lesser god, amazing! The eyes of many ancient gods flickered. They guessed that if this lesser god reached the intermediate god level, his strength would be incomparably terrifying. Lin Ling didn't know any of this. When he slowly opened his eyes, he saw the sky falling and the earth cracking. The mountain world he was in before was constantly collapsing. In the end, only he was left standing in the void. After that, a mysterious force pulled him back into the primordial cloud. 10 Tao realm fragments. As he stared at the gigantic Heavenmen's stone, Lin Ling felt as if he was in a dream. Soon after, he also noticed that there were now 10 more Tao realm fragments that were originally empty. This seemed to be the reward for him from the Tao realm. Look at the divine power. Chapter 4577. Crazy. Once one comprehended the Tao, one would reach the heavens in a single bound. As expected of the Tao realm. Wah! Lin Ling was very clear that if this kind of enlightenment process were to take place in the void of the 9 prefectures, it would be impossible to achieve it without 100,000 years. But now, his foundation as a low-level deity had become even stronger, and he was even closer to becoming a mid-level deity. There was a huge divide between a mid-level deity and a low-level deity. This divide also stopped countless deities. Even the reincarnations and inheritances of ancient deities could not return to their deity thrones and become mid-level deities in a short period of time. After taking a deep breath, Lin Ling began to return to his deity thrones. He was still in the forest where Lei Gong's hall was stationed. The surroundings were quiet, and there were 2 deities standing quietly in the distance. They were the experts of Lei Gong's hall. It was obvious that they had seen Lin Ling in seclusion, so they were secretly guarding Lin Ling. Lin Ling smiled and stood up. My lord, you have come out of seclusion. The 2 deities noticed Lin Ling standing up and walked over. How long have I been in seclusion? Lin Ling asked. My lord, you have not been in seclusion for long. Only a little more than a month. The 2 deities replied at the same time. A little more than a month? Lin Ling was shocked because he felt that only 10 days had passed. He did not expect that he had endured in the light of enlightenment for so long. Did anything happen during this period of time? Lin Ling asked again. The 2 deities wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, one of them said, there was no big trouble, but when Lady Yu and the others were fishing, they encountered a few rascals. What? Someone dared to touch you? Hearing that, Lin Ling's face instantly turned ugly. They didn't dare to act recklessly, but they had their eyes on the place where Lady Yu and the others were fishing. They negotiated with Lady Yu and the others and offered 10 Tao realm shards in exchange for it. However, Lady Yu and the others rejected the offer, so they started to harass Yu and the others every day. That's right, Lord Sakra and the others are all angry. Originally, they wanted to teach them a lesson, but the other party didn't cause any trouble. They were just making a ruckus, which made it difficult for Lord Sakra and the others to make a move. The 2 of them fought to be the first to speak. How shameless! Lin Ling cursed. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked, where are Saint Guyi and the others? He guessed that if treasure god Nan Wufeng Yu and the others were here, they wouldn't be able to act so arrogantly. On the 3rd day of Lord's seclusion, they went to the miasma barrier and haven't come out yet. As for God Emperor Zhang Gang and Giant Ghost, they returned to the 9 continents void and said that they would be back in 3 months. The 2 replied. Lin Ling nodded. The miasma barrier was the only way out of the island, so the ancient gods on the island naturally placed their attention on the miasma barrier. White Water and Plain Lady were no exception. As for God Emperor Zhang Gang and the others, Lin Ling guessed that something happened in Lei Gong's Great Hall and they went back to help. However, in the current 9 continents void, the strongest gods had entered the Tao realm, So what happened in the Nine Continents Void was probably just a small matter. Let's go, bring me to Yu Yu's side, Lin Ling said to the two. Now, Lei Gong's Great Hall was a little famous on the island, but the other party still dared to provoke Lei Gong's Great Hall. Their background was probably not simple. After a long time, a dense bamboo forest appeared in front of them. These bamboos were very ancient, and there were patterns of lightning and fire on the bamboo. If placed in the Nine Continents Void, these bamboos would be rare treasures. And in the bamboo forest, there were clear springs everywhere. The water was hazy, and colorful lights filled the air. It was very mysterious. When the lights reflected, Lin Ling felt as if he was looking through the clear springs and seeing the primal chaos realm. It was as if he had traveled through time and space. And what surprised Lin Ling the most was that all the lights reflected by the clear springs formed a colorful mist in the air. When one walked in it, it was as if they had entered the path of Tao. Tao enlightenment. Lin Ling was shocked. No wonder so many ancient gods were fishing here. It turned out that not only could they cultivate their temperament, they could also comprehend the Tao. If one stayed here for a long time, their divine energy would definitely increase. Of course, the effects of these lights were ultimately not as good as the Tao Enlightenment Seahorse. A cycle of clear springs, a cycle of time. Not far away, an old man was surrounded by divine light. It was obvious that he had broken through. Lin Ling's eyes flashed slightly. Then, he ignored him and walked forward in the bamboo forest. Amitabha good. My Buddha is merciful. The sun and moon are unparalleled. Benefactor, why are you so stubborn? At this time, an ancient voice came from the front. Not far away, beside a clear spring, two men in monk robes sat there. Through the clear spring in front of them, it was as if they could see through the mysteries of heaven and earth. These two men were not old, but their auras were extraordinary. It was as if they were the reincarnations of Buddha. And their voices were not soft. The Buddha's voice clearly affected the people around them. However, the ancient gods around them seemed to be worried, so they only cursed and did not dare to provoke them. Looking at the clear spring not far away, there was another clear spring, but this one was clearly different. The mist was like water vapor, and in the clear spring, one could vaguely see that there were fish swimming freely in the clear spring. These fish were extraordinary. It was as if they were not swimming in water, but in the long river of time. Obviously, this clear spring was more ancient and vast than the other clear springs. Because of this, many people wanted to comprehend Tao by this clear spring, so that their path of martial arts would be firmer. Unfortunately, to encounter such a clear spring, it depended on luck. It could only be encountered by chance. And now, beside this clear spring were Yu Yu and the other two women. They sat quietly by the spring, each with their own beauty. They were playing with the fish in the spring, forming a beautiful scene. The ancient gods knew that these three women were the group of newcomers. So, even if they were jealous, they did not dare to provoke them. Only the two monks were not satisfied. So, not far away, they kept harassing Yu Yu and the other two women. Lin Ling watched quietly from afar. In an instant, he knew what was going on. His face turned uglier. The two monks kept talking about Buddha, but he did not see the benevolence of the Buddha god. Brother Ling. At this moment, Yu Yu looked around and saw Lin Ling not far away. She smiled happily. Lin Ling also walked over. Of course, during this process, the two monks also narrowed their eyes and looked at Lin Ling. They had naturally heard a little about this newcomer, Lin Ling. It was said that this newcomer was one of the best among the son of a low-level deity, and he had the support of a powerful mid-level deity. Are we leaving? One of the monks wanted to back out. Originally, they did not want to provoke Yu Yu and the others. But they were too jealous of the clear spring. Later, when they saw that there were no experts to support them while harassing Yu Yu and the others, they gradually became bolder. Moreover, they had a good relationship with a low-level deity. That person was very powerful. On the island, many people did not dare to provoke him. This made them even bolder. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.